The argument from classical pairs. P-A-I-R-S pairs. Okay, the in philosophy, it's traditional for theists to argue for the existence of God on the basis of the cosmological, teleological, and/or ontological arguments. I shan't rehash those specific arguments here. If you happen to be unfamiliar with them, there's certainly a lot of information available on the internet, so you can simply Google them and you'll find out more than you ever wanted to know about them. What I will do is use those old arguments in a new argument. At least I think it is a new argument. So far as I am aware, nobody has laid out this particular argument for the existence of God before. I once claimed to have coined a new argument from contingency for the existence of God, and was later told that it's to be found in the writings of Leibniz. So I could be wrong in my claim to originality on this argument as well, but like I said, I myself have never seen this anywhere. The basic idea of this new argument, the argument from classical pairs, is to take the old arguments as premises of a new argument. If you are like me, you think the classical arguments are sound, but many people, perhaps most everyone, rejects the soundness of the old arguments. The old arguments, again, are the cosmological, teleological, and ontological. Whether these three arguments are sound or not, that does not matter for my new argument. All that is necessary is the uncontroversial fact that some people have proposed such arguments in the past for our consideration. So I won't be saying that since the cosmological argument is sound, therefore God exists, QED. No, that is not my argument. My theistic proof is rather that these arguments, whether successful or not, whether sound or not, have been made, or my new theistic proof relies on the fact that these arguments have been made by people and discussed by people in the past. More specifically, my new argument is that a rational atheist, qua rational, cannot deny any two of the old arguments at the same time. Before giving the argument proper, I must confess that this is only a rough draft version of the argument and needs some further polishing and reflection and fleshing out. So I need some more time to do that, but here's the rough draft. Premise 1, the argument, the cosmological, let me start over. If the cosmological, teleological, or ontological arguments is sound, then God exists. If the cosmological, teleological, or ontological argument is sound, then God exists. Now, this first premise should be acceptable to all persons, even hardcore atheists. Once we admit premise 1, we admit in addition that for an atheist to be rational, he or she must reject the soundness of all three arguments for the existence of God. So if you are going to remain an atheist in light of these three arguments, the three old arguments, then you have to reject all three of them as being sound. And consider that to be our second premise. The first two premises should be totally acceptable to all persons. Even atheists and agnostics will, I think, admit them. The next three premises, though, are much less plausible, at least at first blush. I'll backpedal in a moment to explain why they ought to be accepted by everyone as well. Alright, premise 3. Denying the cosmological and teleological arguments entails the implicit acceptance of the cosmological argument. So if you deny that the cosmological and teleological arguments are sound, if you deny that they're sound, then you actually accept the cosmological argument. And that is a patent contradiction. You can't reject it and accept it at the same time. Premise 4, denying the cosmological and ontological arguments entails accepting the cosmological argument, which is another patent contradiction. Premise 5, finally, to reject both the teleological and ontological arguments is to accept the teleological. And the conclusion number 6, therefore, no two of the three classical arguments can be unsound, and so God must exist. Alright, so why accept the last three premises? The first premise, that if any of the old arguments is sound, then God exists. Second premise, to be rational and atheistic, you have to deny the soundness of all three arguments. But then the next three were a bit more controversial, so let's look at those in turn. First, the cosmological and the teleological. In practice, the cosmological argument boils down to the principle of sufficient reason. Whenever a person argues that the cosmological argument is unsound, they normally are denying the principle of sufficient reason in the process. So the principle of sufficient reason, that says there is a reason why everything happens. There's always a sufficient reason to explain why something happens. If you deny that, then you affirm that things can happen for no sufficient reason. So keep that in mind, the possibility of things happening for no reason, as we turn from the cosmological to the teleological argument. When a person denies the soundness of the teleological argument, that is equivalent to them affirming that design in nature is the result of unintelligent forces. In biology, the force for design is evolution. Evolution is what designs biological things. And in physics and chemistry, either we don't know what that force is, or there is a multiverse acting together with the anthropic principle, or else there is some other, perhaps yet undiscovered natural force at work, producing the design that we see. And I'm not begging the question by speaking of design. Even if the universe is atheistic, it is beyond question that there are systems within the natural world, and that is all I mean by design. The solar system, the digestive system in animals, etc. So system and design, those words are synonymous in this context. But you see what the teleological denier is doing. He is offering an alternative explanation to the design. Instead of God designing the systems of nature, some scientific principle is responsible. But hold on, I thought you did not accept the principle of sufficient reason. If things can happen for no reason, why not just say that the design in nature does not require an explanation in the first place? It seems then that the atheist does not reject the principle of sufficient reason wholesale. It is just not universally applicable on their view. But there are cases when it is applicable. Now, in my own conversations with people who deny the principle of sufficient reason, there are inevitably two exceptions which they focus on in order to deny the principle of sufficient reason, and only two. The principle of sufficient reason is not universally valid, they've told me, because there is A, quantum indeterminacy, and B, the beginning of the cosmos was simultaneous with the beginning of time, and since causes precede their effects in time, there can't have been a moment before the first moment to have a preceding sufficient cause for the universe coming to be. And we'll pick it up there in video number 2. Thank you.